Hey, well, good evening, everybody. Really happy that everyone was here. Welcome again to our monthly resident meeting. We have basically one topic tonight. We're going to go over some civically specific updates here at the beginning. Just a couple things for your awareness. We're doing this as a hybrid meeting, so we're both live here in the room and via Zoom here on this camera. The microphone is right here, and there's a speaker in the middle that I think you just heard that we went live on the Zoom call. So we'll be getting questions from both throughout. So the agenda for tonight, we're first just going to go over social and community events update, and then we had a late change to the agenda here because Casey couldn't make it to talk about our safety committee update, so Kate's going to fill in for that as well. I'll just talk very briefly and then toss it over to Councilwoman Doyle to talk about the city budget amongst other topics, and then the main event for tonight is to talk about this Fairwinds Landing offshore wind support facility that is going to go down into Chelsea. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kate.
Hey neighbors. Okay, just a couple quick updates for community things and social stuff. The thank you bags that we're going to do for the Centera ER employees and then Norfolk PD. We've had the Williams School, they've decorated about 40 or 50, and then WH Taylor is doing about 60 or 70 of them. And our goal is 200. So if you have any kiddos that you would like to, or their school would like to decorate, just contact me and then I'd be happy to bring you some bags or you can pick them up from me. And thank you to everyone who sent donations. Our living room is starting to fill up with boxes and it's great. So we're gonna have a lot of things to say thank you to the ER workers and NPD for all their hard work. We're going to assemble them sometime in June. Once we get enough donations, then we'll put that on the calendar and just do a get together and assemble them and deliver them. So Tazwell, do you say, is it Hubert? Okay. He has been awesome in helping. It's his idea to do this street sign painting. And so he's done some research on the paint that we're going to get. And we're going to do a few test posts first, and then we're going to go ahead and plan an event to just do some around the neighborhood, block by block. And I've received a few emails from neighbors who want to help volunteer, so thank you. As soon as we figure out how it's going to all go and work, then we'll go ahead and send emails out to everyone who's contacted us, and we'll get going with sprucing up those street signs. And so social events. Next Friday, May 27th, we are going to do a summer kickoff social, similar to our family pizza night that we did. And it's going to be at 5:30, Braden Park. And we'll have drinks for the kids, we'll have pizza, just hang out, and adults bring your own beverages. And then in June, we're going to do a neighborhood brunch with like bagels, donuts, and do some crafts for the kids. And that'll be on a Saturday morning, 10 or 11. We're just trying to figure out the date. And then July 4th is our bike parade. So if you haven't done one of those with us yet, it's a lot of fun. We have a route that goes all around West Ghent, and decorate your bikes as much or as little as you want. Bring music. We'll head out on the route around Braden Place, all around the neighborhood, and then circle back to the park and we'll have popsicles and music and hang out. And then lastly, this is kind of a side note. In the newsletter, we talked about Yellow Fever Park. If you want to help them water, just stop by. But it's actually, they have a whole like water brigade. Sly really likes me. They have a whole water brigade, so you can contact the Westover Garden Club. It's Sean Kuzle Smith. If you need her contact info, you can just reach out to me and I'll connect you with her if you want to volunteer. But they have like a whole system of how they're watering. So if you want to help out, just contact me for the info or reach out to the Westover Garden Club. And that is it for our updates. Oh, and then safety. So Casey couldn't be here tonight, but if you have anything that you would like to share with us as far as like parking issues, bikes being stolen, you can reach out to the WGCL safety@gmail.com email, and that will go directly to Casey. And she's just gonna she'll pass it along to wherever it needs to go. Any concerns that you have regarding safety, just send it to that email. If you send it to our regular feedback email, that's fine, I'll just forward it to her. But she will have a full update of things that we're doing in the June newsletter. And then she'll be here to speak at the next one. So and that is it. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I just have just a couple quick updates. We had our first board meeting that we've had in a while. We're back to regular board meetings. Basically, in the 2 weeks offset from these resident meetings, the board is getting together and just kind of keeping the business going. I mentioned last month that we're on the all donations based model instead of membership based, trying to be more inclusive and get more people feeling welcome to come to the meetings. So we are in the process of getting the books all back together after the transition of the treasurer, and we should have a financial update here in the next few meetings to just discuss where we're at financially. I'm sure you're all waiting with bated breath to find out. But we do also feel like we owe you transparency on what our bank account and how we're spending and what we're receiving and all those kind of things. One other update I'll give you is we had a discussion about resident concerns regarding MHI, all things MHI, parking, traffic, trash, alcohol and drug use. We've gone a long way. I think Mr. Roberts will have some updates for you there as it kind of relates to this Fairwinds landing, because everything kind of overlaps in this topical area. But I will say that I have a scheduled meeting with the Navy. I'll say for those of you that don't know the inner workings of the Navy, but I have a meeting with some Navy leadership in my civilian clothes capacity with the people that oversee the contract for MHI to discuss our concerns and to make sure that the Navy understands where we're coming from as a neighborhood and the importance of MHI being good neighbors. So I think that's it on the high topics, because the big topic for the last several weeks has been this Fairwinds project. So over to you, Councilwoman Doyle.
Thanks, Scott. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see all my neighbors who literally we can all be on our front porches and have a great time together. So thanks. I just wanted to give 2 brief updates, and that is we passed a great budget about 2 weeks ago. The total's about 1.6 billion. And a few highlights are for public safety, sheriffs, and fire and rescue. In addition to the 5% raise that everybody in the city is receiving, they will receive an additional step increase if they've worked for the city for 6 years or more, which gets them to almost a 10% increase this year alone, effective July 1. That's really great. Also, the minimum wage for all city employees who are full-time will now be $18 an hour. And if they're temporary or part-time, it'll be $15. So that's very strong as well. So we hope through those mechanisms, in addition, we are paying folks that have a certified driver's license that can drive big trucks. They get $5,000 a year to keep that certification for the CDL license. And then there's also paid parental leave. There's a lot that we put into the people side of Team Norfolk, because we felt it was very important to retain those that we have and be an attractive city for whom people want to work. So we really did focus very much on the people side. Public safety is my #1 priority. I would say if you asked any city council member, they would say the exact same. I will say yesterday was a great day. The city arrested 2 folks, one related to the MacArthur shooting and one related to the shooting on Granby Street. I think that's really strong. I think Chief Goldsmith has done a really wonderful job. At some point, he did go to a Civic League last night. It's his first time kind of out since he's been in the place, in the role. So you might want to have him come in a few weeks, but he's really doing some good changes to the department and people are thrilled to have him. Yeah, so I'm thrilled about the public safety. I'm thrilled about yesterday's arrests. I think that's wonderful. And then I'm going to talk about one more thing and then go back to the budget and land on a high note. Today, I had a very interesting experience. 39 police officers died in the line of duty while working for the Norfolk Police Department since the beginning of the department. So literally since '01. And every year they have a Peace Memorial Day, and it's this time of year, and it was today, and it's in City Hall, and they ring the bell 39 times. And they call out all the names of those who have passed. And I had the complete honor of giving the proclamation. The mayor was out of town today. So I was the stand-in, and I'll tell you, talk about a humble but a austere ceremony to see those family members out there and the police out there and the police chief. I mean, it just truly gives me chills now to think what they did today and the way they honor the fallen. And so it's just an unbelievable experience. I just wanted to say, we really do have a great police force. We are down several hundred, 230, I think roughly at this point. But I think what you're gonna hear from Chief Goldsmith is that he's reorganizing the department so that it's not trying to fill the holes of a 780 department, but how do you build a department around 450 or 500 that you then add on to and add on to. So you're gonna see some changes. They're gonna go into effect June 1. I don't know all the details. He spoke of them a little bit last night, but he definitely has a very strong plan in place. So I'm thrilled about that. So back to the budget, a few more highlights. I'll just do 2 more. Elizabeth River Trail, which we all have loved during this pandemic. The city has now dedicated the Elizabeth River Trail as what's called an outside agency. So they now will receive a budgeted line item every year. This year they received $150,000. We all love the trail, we love the city. But at the very beginning, it was not codified what the city was going to do and responsible for, and then what the trail folks were going to do. And so in the meantime, a lot of maintenance went undone. And so really this $150,000 is going to go towards what should have been done a long time ago. And then we'll play catch up. But I'm just thrilled because right now it's codified $150,000. And then I'll end on a high note too, and that is, as you know, our schools are aging. And so the city has put a plan together for $700 million over 30 years, where we will be able to fund school construction, maintenance, and modernization, starting with Maury High School at $150 million. And then we're going to do some elementary schools like Norview, Jaycox, and Granby, who also desperately need renovation or reconstruction, whatever the school board decides to do. But just know that we have a plan in place so that these buildings can be either maintained better and or rebuilt or modernized in some sort of fashion. We just knew that we could not get there on a regular good old budget. Fortunately, we have revenue coming in from the casino and we have revenue otherwise. And so our finance people worked with the finance people of Norfolk Public Schools to come up with this plan. So I'm really thrilled because when I was on school board, we struggled just to get maintenance money out of the city, which barely replaced the HVAC, seriously. But now it's a different day. So good because we need these schools to be in good shape for our children to learn. So I'm gonna leave it there and then turn it over to Mel Price and team. So thank you though, Patrick Roberts, for being here tonight as well. He's our deputy city manager. And I think you'll enjoy hearing from him. So thanks, Scott.
Yeah. Real quick there. I don't want to take too long here to introduce this topic, but many of you saw the press release that came out here a few weeks ago about the announcement of this project on the Norfolk Southern property down in Chelsea at the end of Warpax, at the very end across from what used to be Tortilla West. I can say that before this got announced, through Courtney's help and with actually with our discussions with MHI, we became aware that this was pretty soon in coming. And Mel has been great in communicating to us, like her outreach with the Civic League to start. Basically, the intent of this is to, broadly speaking, for her to share what the big flick idea is, or what's going on at down at Lambert's Point. And then she is here on behalf of the Fairwinds team to listen to what resident concerns might be and incorporate where our concerns are into the plans to develop this property and turn it into basically a tax revenue for the city and for the Commonwealth. So I just really appreciate your partnership in this. And additionally, as you know, as we started to express our concerns, at my level and Matt Noah, the vice president's level, it became increasingly apparent to us that we were going to need to talk with the city about how we were going to accommodate this growth in the Chelsea area. And because of that, Mr. Patrick Roberts is here to discuss what the city is doing to kind of marry up this development with Chelsea and West End. So thank you.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and everyone on Zoom. I'm Mel Price. I am a resident here in West Ghent on the 1100 block of Brayton. I'm an architect. This is Peter Johnston, also with WPA. And so we're architects and urban designers, kind of wear many hats in the city. So we're here tonight talking about Fairwinds Landing, but we also hold the urban design contract for the city of Norfolk. So we're often building a bridge between what the city is working on and what type of private development is happening. And then, as Courtney alluded to, Rachel McCall, who's here, and Peter and myself helped start the foundation for the Elizabeth River Trail. So the trail had been here for a long time. Many people worked very hard to put that in place, and then we started the foundation to help support it. So I'm happy to be here. There are a couple of presentations here, and I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit because we're talking about an iterative process. So there is no full plan developed, but we want to be fully transparent about what's happening, kind of show you how thoughts have evolved as this process has gone on. So the reason that we were hired is that the developer for the project, Jerry Miller, began looking into this project. He is not an offshore wind person. He actually, if you want to skip ahead, there's a little bit about the developers. Next slide. He owned a company called Earl Industries that he sold to General Dynamics. He comes from a maritime background, and so he started looking at the Lambert's Point property owned by Norfolk Southern. And as he was walking around the neighborhood and talking to people in Norfolk, he ran into former Mayor Paul Frame, and former Mayor Paul Frame said, "Great that you want to do this project. Think it's going to be wonderful for the city and the region and the Commonwealth, but there are a lot of really serious problems you will have to address in Chelsea and in West Ghent if you are to encounter neighbors who want to welcome your project." And he suggested that Jerry reach out to us because we live in the neighborhood and we know Chelsea and West Ghent well. So we'll go through the vision for the project. If you have questions, just jump in. Anyone on Zoom or anyone here. I do want to walk you through the full development. It's a huge site and it takes a minute to understand what's happening here. But we can just go ahead and flip ahead. So next slide.
I'm sorry.
However, take your time.
Mel, in the meantime, you might want to
Yes.
describe Lambert's Point, which side of Lambert's Point.
Okay, so we're talking about everything that's behind Smartmouth and Dogtown and the Birch and everything that's really behind Chelsea, but we can't see it very well. You see it if you walk to the end of those streets, but it's difficult to understand how large the property is until you actually go out there. So this is not the Lambert's Point neighborhood. This is Chelsea's Lambert's Point docks. And so the area will be renamed Fairwinds Landing. So the lead developer is Jerry Miller. He's a veteran and he owns several companies, and he is also, he and Mike, who is leading this, will be happy to come and talk specifically anytime as well. The Miller Group is one of his companies. They develop residential and commercial real estate. And if you've ever been to Green Flash Brewery, they own Green Flash Brewery as well. Fred is with Fairlead. And Fred and the Fairlead company will be on site here. They focused historically on ship repair. On this particular site, they'll be focusing more on ship storage. Large pieces from Newport News Shipbuilding that Newport News Shipbuilding has run out of room to store. And so there will be some storage at very large ship parks here. And then Mike Hopkins, who is really the point of contact for this project. They owned and operated a US flag vessel. They've since sold that, so he's fully focused on this project. So they're based out of Hampton Roads, better known small business. And next slide. Here's the site, and we really don't see this in our daily walks through the neighborhood until you look at this from Google Earth. Then we'll switch over to Google Maps and talk through each of these. If you look at this from above, there are 3 piers on the site. And so the red line is the boundary for the development. And it's large enough to house 3 significant offshore wind tenants. We also have Matt Smith here. He also lives in the neighborhood. He is the director for offshore wind for the Virginia Alliance. And if you have questions about offshore wind, Matt can answer those questions more specifically. And actually, if we scoot ahead, next slide, The reason that this site has been selected is that there was a ranking done of ports all up and down the East Coast. And if you look, there are 3 that came to the top. It was the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, this particular site in Chelsea, and then Portsmouth Marine Terminal. So those all scored 60 out of 70 in the rankings of the best places to locate this type of business. They'll be assembling pieces of these offshore wind turbines. And in this particular location, the parts that they'll stand up, put on a ship, and take out to the ocean will be 300 feet tall. When a turbine is fully assembled, it's over 800 feet tall. So this will not be a full turbine, but we needed clearance to get all of these parts and pieces out to the open ocean. And Matt, jump in, correct me if I'm butchering.
Doing a good job.
Okay, perfect. Next slide.
And am I right in saying that the actual, I go out in
Yes.
this neck of the woods fairly often. I was out there last week. The wind farm is going to be 27 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach and then going down into North Carolina as well. Is that a true statement?
Mostly true. So yes, the Dominion project, I think you're referencing, so there's 2 projects that are kind of our projects that we kind of claim as Anchorage, Virginia projects. The Dominion project will be 176 turbines and it will be 27 to 42 miles offshore, but wholly in Virginia's kind of waters. It'll produce enough electricity to power 660,000 homes. And then there's a project in North Carolina as well that's basically on the border that's being developed by another company, but will likely be serviced out of Hampton Roads.
It's a significant impact. This slideshow, I should say, was created actually for City Council. If you saw the date on the front, it was from December. It has not been updated since then. So you are seeing the original presentation that was created for City Council. So these were the early thoughts that Jerry Miller and the Fairwinds team put together. This is what they thought. This is their vision. We could support shipbuilding and repair and support, including storage. We could support offshore wind, and then this intermodal transportation and logistics. Just, capturing anything that the port needs for support. Next slide. And actually, this comes in a series, so you can skip ahead until everything's on the page. Okay, keep on going. We'll do it all at once. One back. Perfect. Okay, so these were the opportunities for the site. Offshore wind, so this would be operations and maintenance. Manufacturing, this might be braiding the cables, putting together pieces of the towers and monopiles, the blades, assembling parts of this, standing it up, sending it out to sea. Construction, marshaling, and staging, so materials would come in by the water, by boat, by ship, move around on the site, be assembled, I saw that, Fred, ship, not boat, and then go back out to sea. And so Fairlead, they thought they would be doing ship repair, they're likely doing storage to start. And then any sort of cargo. So next, those are all the opportunities. This next map shows you where they think all these parts and pieces are going. So Pier N, and this is the farthest to the north, would be dedicated to offshore wind. So you can imagine ships are going to pull in here. They'll be able to move goods into this marshaling area that's defined by this yellow line, assemble things, move them back, and then take them out on the ship. So this is all offshore wind to the north. This is moving things around for offshore wind and getting them assembled and out. Over here is Fairlead, so that's the storage and maybe someday some parts of ship repair. And then down here would really be office and support for Dominion's portion of the offshore wind effort. This middle pier will be removed. The vessels that come in are so large, they're actually gonna turn them around sideways, bring them up here. This is all going to be reinforced. There's a lot of environmental work being done here. And then the turbines will be loaded on sideways here. And then we'll be able to sit at Smart Mouth and watch the thing turn around and go out to sea. So let's see, we can skip ahead. This back in December, this is what they put together was they thought these were the things they thought they would do that's happening now. So repair and upgrade the existing piers. Peter and I had the chance to go out and walk around on one of them, and and it's wild how large it is. We thought we would walk through the site. We actually got in a car, we drove through the building. There was an 18-wheeler in the building that looked like a miniature truck. And it took us like 5 minutes to get to the other end of the building. So it's just massive. Site improvements. So they've completed their phase 1, phase 2 environmental. They're now doing the NEPA EPA study. And so all of that will be available when completed. But the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental actually came out pretty clean, which is shocking. There's actually big chemical vats out there if you go out on the property, but the property has been well maintained. Parking, this is something I'm going to show you that was a thought that we had before we actually talked to folks in Chelsea. So I'll show you that piece of the puzzle. I would really love your feedback on whether you think that's a good idea, a bad idea. I thought it was a good idea at first. We're now kind of sitting in the camp of we think it might not be such a great idea. And they are pursuing some grants for the environmental work and other things on the site. And one thing I should have said before when we had the image of the site up, actually maybe we could go back to. There you go. You can see all the rail lines that are coming into the site. They will be removing a lot of those. The majority of the people and the pieces coming in and out will be by water. They will use some of those rail lines, but the rest they will be removing. We can skip back ahead. Okay. So before they talked to anyone, this is what they wrote down on paper that they understood would be the neighborhood considerations. Parking, they understood there was an existing parking problem, so they thought that maybe if they built a parking garage, both for the MHI folks, for their own staff, and also for the small businesses in the neighborhood, that might help. Require tenants to park on site as well as off site. They understood that no one wanted truck traffic going through the neighborhood. And so they wanted to focus on moving over water and rail. And their thought early on, another really important feedback point was that if the vehicles that do need to go on the site all funnel to the south of the neighborhood, to Chelsea, to go in one gate, that would be a lot of traffic cutting through, that perhaps a better idea would be to have more access points. And that's something we should talk about tonight. And then work with the city. And this is why Patrick Roberts is here to talk about a sensible traffic plan to get in and out of Chelsea without people cutting through the neighborhood. So the city has actually retained a consultant from WSP that looks at really big transportation projects, and she's working on figuring out a long-term plan for this point right here. And then certainly cleanliness, there will be no coal there. And then they certainly understood and saw the trash problem that's happening now, and they thought they could be part of the solution of, if we get out ahead of it, we could clean it up and get this clean and safe before this development comes. And so we can skip ahead. So this was written in December again. Timing was they'd be negotiating with Norfolk Southern. The contract was signed, Courtney, was it last week or the week before? Last week,
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
right
ago.
before the announcement.
Okay, perfect. That they'd be working on finding subtenants. That's ongoing. That pier end, or the pier that I showed you with the large building, they've been surprised that there's actually a lot of office tenants who want to move in there. So they're figuring out who wants to be here to support the offshore wind industry. And that construction might begin sometime in 2023. And that the hope was that they would be operating in 2025 at kind of full scale. So that's the anticipated timeline. We'll see. Construction timelines are always a little hopeful. So I think we can switch. I'd like to switch over to some early diagrams. Oh, perfect. Actually, if you wanted to hit the satellite view, probably more people will be able to relate to that. Perfect. Okay, so we're really talking about everything from here right up to the edge of Chelsea and back up. And I think I'll show the parking garage proposal and then we'll come back to the map if that's okay. That's this one. Thank you. So before we talk to anyone, and to date, Peter and Jacob, another colleague of ours at WPA, who also lives in the neighborhood, have met with, we've had 19 meetings. So it was important to us to start in Chelsea by the people closest to this. So we met with business owners and property owners. We've now been to the Chelsea Business Association meeting twice, and this is our very first meeting with the residents of West Ghent. And that's going to continue as often as anyone wants us to come back. So this was our thought before we met with anyone. We wanted to have an image to have a discussion with people, so we can skip ahead. And first thought was, knowing there's a parking problem and there's just speeding and traffic and trash and drugs and alcohol, all the problems. If we could get people off of Brambleton, drive just up one block, up Raleigh, turn in to a garage where they would be required to park here and walk to the site, and then design the garage in such a way that they come out and then go right to the Midtown Tunnel or back to Brambleton, that we keep people vehicles out of the neighborhood. That was our first thought. And then the second thought was, you know, we live in the neighborhood, we want to wrap that in something beautiful, whether it's residential, commercial. So these colored boxes are a diagram representing multifamily or you know, I was actually thinking almost like a 3-story house, like a beautiful West Ghent house that has a shared wall. And then the red would be some commercial. So we looked at one that wrapped the building entirely. The next slide, we thought about a diagram that would omit that from the north side and actually just give a widened space for the Elizabeth River Trail. We thought about a green wall, maybe a trellis over top of the trail that you would ride through to feel protected. And this looked like a 4-story garage, if you want to hop ahead. And these were just our thoughts. We kept walking through the neighborhood and seeing that the folks who work here drive mostly trucks and SUVs, they're larger vehicles. People don't park in garages unless they're easy and comfortable. And so everything, wider spaces, wider drive aisles, make it easy. Skip ahead. You see what this looks like at 4 stories with over 700 spaces. And this is a diagram, not a building design, colored blocks diagram. We wanted to get a sense of scale of what would this feel like in our neighborhood. So we just started walking the dogs back and forth and thought, okay, this scale feels kind of okay. And let's test it at the height limit that it could be by right. So if you skip ahead, we added 2 more stories, 956 spaces, still the option of the housing, or if you skip ahead, the expanded trail. You can just keep skipping ahead. This is the scale of what could be built on that property by right, which is 6 stories. And to me as an architect, I think it looks a little bit too big. It feels like it overwhelms the neighborhood, but that's how we got started on something that we could discuss with people. Since then, we're actually starting to just abandon this altogether. There might be a higher and better use of that property right in the middle of Chelsea in the neighborhood altogether, but really want to get some feedback on that. And then finally, that one other PDF, and then I'll stop talking and we can talk. The circulation of the other one, circulation. Okay, so and actually if you'll go back to page 1. The next thing that we did is we had 18 meetings and we took pages and pages of notes. And the more questions we asked, we got into more detail, like the size of the truck that delivers beer to my place is this big. And it's interacting with people dropping off their dogs at Dogtown, and the trucks coming to TyCon, and the trucks coming to CHKD. And we started to document all of this. So next slide. So we went out and we have a street measuring stick, and we measured all of the streets to understand exactly how wide they all are, to understand like what can actually fit, what size truck, how many cars parked on the street. And so we documented that and turned that over to City of Norfolk Department of Transit. Next slide. And then we'd heard so much about parking and people parking illegally and getting tickets and throwing them on the grounds instead of the trash. And so we went and analyzed, like, where is 1 hour parking, where's 2 hour parking, what's a loading zone, where is no parking. And we started a diagram that talked to what people told us they would want to see in front of their businesses. So work in progress. Next slide. We looked at, what are the existing uses? One of the things people kept saying is the folks who work currently there are walking or driving to 7-Eleven, buying food, dropping trash back along the way. An easy win might be to provide that service or that use closer to where people are going to work, so the littering doesn't happen. So we started to think about how the parts and pieces could be resituated. And then next slide, just started to note, what are the primary, the secondary, the tertiary routes that pedestrians are taking. We certainly observed, 100 at the business association meeting, if 100 cars went by, none of them were going 15 or 25 miles an hour. They were at 30 or 40, and maybe 10 of them stopped at a stop sign at best. And then that condition was overlapping pedestrians trying to cross the ERT, strollers, stop, everything. So some serious conflicts. And then next, we went out and cataloged the existing trash cans. We started to think about adding more trash cans, probably increasing the frequency that the trash gets picked up. So these were just thoughts, and it's just us getting our design thoughts out about problems that are happening and how might we get ahead of this. And then next, and that was just thinking about access. And this is important because this will talk when we go back to the map. Is it better if folks coming to Fairwinds go all the way to the south and all come in and out of one access? Is it better if we open up some more of these areas so the traffic's distributed? These folks need some more turning space, so they might not want trucks going in, more trucks or traffic going in and out of their streets. There's a lot of things to solve for. With that, I think we'll just put the Google map on the screen. And what would be most helpful is if you just continue to tell us what all the problems are that need to be solved for, any questions, and we'll take notes and go from there.
And then Mel, I think Pat Roberts.
Oh, sorry, the floor. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
This is the camera here for the folks at home.
Right there.
All right, good. I'm Pat Roberts. It's good to see everybody. Just want to begin by saying thank you for being engaged, being involved, looking out for your neighborhood and for one another. Thank you, Councilwoman Doyle, for the same and for voting yes on the budget. A lot of good stuff coming in the upcoming fiscal year. So I've been with the city of Norfolk a whopping 10 months, I think. But I've been in local government for about 22 years. So I was really excited to jump at the opportunity to come and work over here. I actually lived nearby on Bosvane, but that's been many years ago. So I've really just been welcomed back into the community. It's really felt good to be here. I've only been involved with this specific project at this location a very short time, just a few months, but I've actually been tracking it. I worked in Suffolk for about 13 years. And we were tracking this wind energy thing for many, many years and seeing potential projects crop up. So when this happened and it's all coming together, I'm like, wow, I'm working in Norfolk. This thing is happening. That's an awesome industry. It's an incredible project. It is a beautiful site with not very good road access. I was like, it's almost perfect. But the road access kind of bugged me a little bit. I oversee, as deputy city manager, I have public works, transportation, utilities, planning, and some other functions related. And so the manager and Jared invited me in to learn about the project. And that was the first thing I said was, we've got to get the right traffic engineer in here and figure this out very quickly and get a running start at it. So to that end, Mel mentioned we've got WSP, specifically Kristen Belfield, working on this project. And I just said, Kristen, I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to give you any advice how to start, but think way outside the box and understand that there's some things going on inside the neighborhood now that are negatively impacting the day-to-day neighborhood feel and livability. And we don't want to make that worse. We want to really look at how we maximize vehicular access to this new project site. And at the same time, give me some ideas how I can improve what's going on day-to-day for the small businesses who are growing here and developing, and also for the families that have been here a while and trying to enjoy the neighborhood. So big picture, I think Mel mentioned it. What the WSP group is going to look at is understanding if we can maximize as much of the project cargo coming in and out of the site via rail and water. You've still got construction-related traffic, employees, once it gets up and running, who need to access the site throughout the various shifts of the operation. That's what we really want to focus on. I'm not here to share with you any preliminary ideas. We haven't got that far along, but we hope to come back. I hope that Kristen can interact with you guys, get your thoughts before we get too far along in project development. My goal would be to develop what I call in my world CIP project or capital project, city construction projects, where we could come in and make some significant improvements to circulation to help people get in and out of the neighborhood in a way that does not impact you. Certainly no more than it does today, but see if we can improve things. That's my very specific goal on this project. But in talking with Mel and John Stevenson, you folks probably know John in transit, and Kristen recently, we got to talk about this MHI or the shipyard thing. And I'm like, well, that sounds weird. Like how, like I understand Councilwoman Doyle's met with these folks a number of times. Pete in our office, several staff have sat down with the shipyard representatives with mixed success. I think we have seen positive things come out of those, and then we've seen those positive things fall by the wayside. So they come and go. I'd really like for us to reinvigorate that discussion and not approach it from the perspective of, you know, what can you do better? What can we sort of arm wrestle you into doing? But partner with the city. How can we work with you, a major employer, to make this better? Not only for the company so they can continue to do well, but how can we improve this for the neighborhood, for the employees? And I'm committed to that. I can't believe we can't make it better. I'll go ahead and tell you, because I confessed it the other day, I was a shipyard worker in my first career. I did not jump right into local government. I said it's been 22 years I've been in local government. I'm only 30. But actually, the first half of the 1990s, I was a civilian shipyard worker. I worked in the Navy Yard, graduated from the apprentice school, was a journeyman mechanic. And so I've worked on a whole lot of submarines, and I have called them boats. I don't know I think a submarine's a boat for sure. So I said, I gotta put my shipyard worker hard hat back on and think about what are the things that would incentivize me to make better decisions about how I get to work, how I act when I'm going to lunch, and what would incentivize me to act in ways that wouldn't be a drain on the neighborhood, and what would penalize me in a way that would cause me to not do that more than once. And so I'm trying to think about it in those terms, because it's a neighborhood. This is not a parking lot. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And I get that there's on any given shift like 3,000 people that are coming here, but they don't need to impact the neighborhood as negatively as it sounds like it's going on. And I applaud the stick-to-itiveness of Councilwoman Doyle and the staff. If y'all have been in the conference room with these folks any number of times. So I'm not saying it's by lack of effort. I'm not saying I've got any better ideas, but I do really want to ask these folks, look, enough is enough. The city wants to support, should prepare. We specifically want to support this company, but we really do need to partner and make some commitments to one another. So that's going to be the focus of my work here in the near term. Specifically to that end, I apologize if I'm rambling, particularly for the folks at home on the camera. Mel did a great job outlining a lot of the boots on the ground work of understanding what are the existing conditions of on-street regulations, parking signs, and what can we do to make that up to date and fit what's really going on in the neighborhood today. And that's where my work comes in. We want to see if we can implement some of those suggestions as quickly as possible. Some of that may be, and I don't want to predetermine it, but if we need to transition some all-day parking to more transient parking to support the businesses, that could be a thing. But parking enforcement has to happen. And I've asked the enforcement staff, don't go out there and write everybody a ticket until we figure out very quickly where are we targeting. Because the worst thing I can do is write all y'all tickets. That's not what I want to do. I really want to target where is this not working, and where can we write tickets to folks And I said, you're kidding, somebody would ball up a city parking ticket, throw it on the ground. I'm halfway in disbelief about that. I was like, we tow people, right? We do. So we really do need to be more assertive in enforcing the parking and mean business, because I can tell you in the 4.5 years I worked in the Navy Yard, I got one parking ticket. And that was one too many. Maybe I'm an easy learner. I don't know. But those are the things that we want to focus on, because this is such a beautiful neighborhood. We only want to figure out a way to make it better and not in any way allow these things to continue in a way that's continues to be detrimental to you. So what else? I know I'm rambling. I'm sorry. What else did I not
Targeted
cover?
enforcement,
Yeah.
really having someone responsible for clean and safe. We did
Yeah.
hear, especially from women in our outreach so far, that they don't feel safe during the
Yeah.
day. And we did hear from both men and women that they feel safe at night, but not during the day. That's something we've not ever heard in a neighborhood before,
Yeah.
anywhere that we've worked.
Yeah, so yeah, we've heard about the police department's limitations with staffing, but we really do need to see how we can improve that police presence in the neighborhood at those peak periods where there's potentially bad behavior taking place. I'm so glad that once again, I live in a society where everybody says we love the police and we need more police, because we need to bring you some more police. We need to have an enhanced police presence and actually look for bad behaviors that we can assign consequences to, because this can't be in anything goes there.
So one other thing to add is that at the Chelsea Business Association, I think as we neared the end of the meeting, there was a slightly more empathetic approach to the MHI folks. These type of problems don't really happen unless amenities are not being provided to them. There's no easy way for them to get lunch on a regular basis. There aren't places to sit and eat your lunch. Brandy Flores spends sometimes an hour cleaning up all of the trash in their bushes before they open. They come to work and they find people eating their lunch on the stoop. Bakehouse and the Birch, same thing. It's a half an hour cleanup for them minimal. And when they arrive, there's folks eating breakfast, lunch, you name it, on their furniture. So that's happening because that business is not providing for their workers. And that's also not fair to the people working there. So that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Two things. Did you guys do a transportation study before you agreed to this project going in back here?
Short answer is no, because this, you may have heard, or some of you may have talked to staff about it. This is what we call a by right project. On anything that triggers a zoning question that would go to city council or planning commission, then city council, that's when we can compel the developer, the applicant, to do a traffic impact analysis or traffic study. And we look at the use that's proposed and how that impacts all the intersections, and you go off site. And then that translates into things that we make the developer do to improve the traffic. We don't have that opportunity at all on a by right development. It's existing zoning for industrial, and it fits the existing use.
And by right means private companies selling to a private company.
I apologize.
It's zoning, the zoning.
It's a zoning.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's zoning jargon for you already have permission. That's what it means. It's,
But we
you're
also-
developing by the rights that you have by law.
Yeah, but we also can't prevent Norfolk Southern from leasing their property to
Right.
another entity, so it is a private transaction.
Yeah.
So the parking garage idea, can we encourage the Miller Group to build the parking garage inside the yard?
Yes, I think that's where we're headed now. They
Right.
thought at first that
And then we
people would
need
want that.
MHI to build one on their site too.
I think that might also be where we're headed.
I walk every morning really early, and so I'm in that whole area. I've watched the people park in the neighborhood and don't care. And I also watch the trash as they walk into the yard in the morning. It just sort of follows them as they go into the shipyard. And another reason why they like their cars, and I shouldn't generalize, but that's where they go. That's where they smoke their weed in the morning before they go to work, and that's where they smoke their weed at lunchtime. It's pretty rampant. I'm there when they open their car doors.
Yes. Oh, so you're Yes,
I'm breathing.
contact them, yes. Let's.
I'm getting ready for work.
West Ghent is a neighborhood of choice. And it's a neighborhood that has a lot of different housing types that serve every life span, every life cycle. From apartments when you're just starting out to apartments when you want to retire to big homes for families. It's a real asset to Norfolk. We know we're in an urban environment. We know we're squeezed between the coal yards and a medical center, and we know that Chelsea has grown. But Norfolk has a lot to lose if they don't treat West Ghent with a lot of respect on track.
Yeah.
You would not allow something like this to happen on raw land without a major gateway portal.
Right.
And you're allowing it to happen now because you can't stop it. The big problem is getting traffic access to Hampton Boulevard directly from Chelsea without either going through the north-south axis of Claremont Avenue or Redgate Avenue. Now, the residents of West Ghent have already put up with a lot of traffic calming and redirecting efforts because of the Midtown Tunnel. Claremont Avenue going one way, we can't turn right out of our neighborhood on Hampton Boulevard, except at Azalea. Now, we are the laboratory mice because people wanted to cut through our neighborhood to get to the Midtown Tunnel. That's largely been solved, but it doesn't take too many backups for people who don't give a rat's ass about West Ghent to start cutting through it again. That's what we have with MHI right now. Motorcycles, cars that don't stop at stop signs, cars that speed, people that do not care about our neighborhood. They want to get out of work. And it's unconscionable to let them continue to go through West Ghent. Now, I have greatest respect for your planning process here, but would you go back a slide or two?
Do you want to just be on the Google map or?
No, I want the parking deck
Oh, I think
scenarios
that's
with,
kind of.
with red and
kind of out the
yellow
window.
arrows.
Oh, right back. That's where the gate comes down.
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Different parking,
keep going.
all the way back to the beginning, kind of like slide 2. Yeah.
You're,
Yeah,
this,
any of them.
any of these is fine. The 800-pound gorilla in the room is that you have 2 red arrows leaving, but there's an unprinted red arrow that goes straight up Claremont Avenue. You know that,
Yeah.
we all know that.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And we've measured that, like with John Stevenson, trying to get an initial kind of wrap around it. I think that, I don't think anybody's in denial of what you're saying.
I don't think anybody is in denial, but I want the city to hear it, and I want everybody in the neighborhood to know that they need to speak up. Because it's been going on
Way too long.
20
for way
years,
too long.
20 years.
There was a respite with the Midtown Tunnel, but then MHI starts to pour it on.
Well, the only thing that got NHI to do what they were supposed to do at the beginning, and Councilwoman Doyle and the Civic League went to the Navy.
Correct.
And the Navy came down on MHI and said, you either fix this or we're gonna yank your contracts. I think I'm right.
See, Mel, you're in a hard spot here because urban planning with neighborhoods like this is, how do you link? How do you integrate? How do you get
So we're used
the
to doing.
fabric reunited and the grid and so forth? But that's great,
Now have
but
to
we don't
unlink
want
it.
that for 1,000 cars a day leaving through a residential neighborhood.
And remember,
and-
this was done before we spoke to anyone to get reaction. I mean, it doesn't work. We've thrown it out, but we thought it was important to show you because
But
you
no
might.
matter where you put a parking facility, if it's on MHI's land or on Fairwinds land, they're still subject to the grid system that's there and trying to get to Hampton Boulevard. Which, I mean, some of the restrictions that are in place now may need to be rethought, like the ramp onto the Midtown Tunnel that's closed there, because all they do now is go turn right on Redgate and make an illegal right turn on Hampton Boulevard. If you want to get some budget income, you just start writing tickets where they turn illegally right from Redgate onto Hampton and also left from Redgate onto Hampton from Collie. That's just a field day.
Or go down Brambleton and make
Field
a
day.
U-turn.
There should be no U-turn at Brambleton and Collie.
So
I mean, when you see that number of U-turns, you know you've got a problem.
there's two other thoughts that came out of the end of the Chelsea Business Association meeting. One, so we can scrap this because we've heard that's not gonna work, but one is either like an overpass to get directly to Hampton, something that's gonna get us through there, but we also said, what if we stop talking about it as parking and think about it as a transit problem as well? Do we want this much surface parking? Could folks, like they do at other places, ride a bus from one of the city-owned parking lots into the neighborhood?
So-
Maybe the people who have a lot of money to spend on Fairwinds or whatever can be part of the capital funding for a road that gets their people and their trucks to greater access once they leave Chelsea. Maybe it's not all the city.
So at the beginning of MHI, we were told as a neighborhood or as the Civic League that they would bus their people in from the, their main office over in another section of.
Indian
Norfolk.
River Road.
Indian River Road. That lasted a little while, but I haven't seen a bus come out of there in eons. So your idea is wonderful,
Has to be
as long as
enforced.
it's, yeah, as long
Has
as
to be
they keep
enforced.
doing it.
Yeah, I shared a personal experience of mine. Kate and I moved here from Bremerton, Washington. And there is Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. So it's very similar to Norfolk Naval. But one thing that struck me working on that shipyard was that the local transit authorities, plural, because of the span of people that work there, they had buses pull in at the end of the shift, like 30 minutes before the end of the shift. They were literally lined up inside the yard. And these were public buses. They were actually more like Greyhound style, like transit buses as
These
opposed
were
to.
school buses.
But the local transit authority ran it with funding from the yard to supplant it, and they would take them from, they would branch out all around the local area and drop them off at parking lots, like park and rides in their neck of the woods, right? And then in the morning, they would park at that park and ride and all come in a controlled manner every day. And that's how Bremerton accommodated that massive shipyard. And I think that, this is much different here in Norfolk because there's a group of private yards that are all much smaller than Puget. But there's room for creativity in public-private partnership, I think.
I think at MHI, Mel, correct me, the parking that's over behind the Fort Norfolk Medical Building is where the Navy people park. The parking on Raleigh Avenue is where the civilians park.
The contracts.
So you might have solved its share of the problem with MHI by MHI putting all the Navy people over there where they could ride their Lime scooters and leave them on the Elizabeth River Trail.
Yes,
But
It's the civilians that the Navy can't control that are
and
the
some of
ones.
them can't get security clearance to
Right.
park on site.
Isn't there a parking though off of Orpac for MHI? As
There's
well?
they lease a gravel lot from Norfolk site.
I walked by that the other day
Yeah.
when all this was, this was the first I heard about it, and it was half full.
So
But
that,
yet we have people parking in our
that
neighborhood.
lot, the one right across from Bake House.
Yes,
That lot is on the Fairwinds property, so that will
be gone.
become part of that. So they have, that lot, that you were just talking about right there, they have a lot. in the middle of
Church
Chelsea,
Street.
and they have just down here. About a mile property, and then they have their own lot. on
Right.
their property.
I saw that.
And it's just divided up by like which types of people are using it. It's not really based on actual usage or counts. It's just these people go there, those go there. So it's like 600 down here and 500 spaces on the road. We only have 350 employees, so it's.
But
not a
if
great
they're
distribution.
assigned to park here, but they're actually working here, you can bet they're parking here in the neighborhood and then it's right that way.
Excuse me, how many employees will be at Fairwinds?
So the newspaper article said 500 to 700. And so that's how they intend to start it. I mean, this is speaking as a planner, I think we should plan for more than that. It's better to over plan.
And this
Because
is
we
a
don't know what we're
24-hour
gonna do.
day business?
I don't know. I don't think it's 24 hours, but yeah, I go to answer that.
Depends on the use, so I think certain aspects of it would be a normal workday. If there was a fabrication facility, they'd probably have shifts. So I think parts of the facility might operate
So-
more than your 9 to 5 workday.
So the numbers right now, having met with MHI recently, they like, I think Mel just mentioned, they have 350 or so core employees that get MHI paychecks. But there's really 2,000 people going through the shipyard gate every day. And that includes what they term core employees, subcontractors, which are contractors that they've employed, the sailors, and then the Mid-Atlantic Regional Maintenance Center subcontracts out certain things that didn't fit within the core contract that MHI terms third-party subcontractors. And so I'm not espousing their position, I'm just sharing it with you, is that, you know, they say, well, they can park on Redgate because it's a public street and there's no restrictions against parking on Redgate Avenue, right? And they say, we encourage and we have spots for everybody, but they choose to park elsewhere. And I can't order someone to not park in a legal parking space in West End. And I think that goes back to what Mel was saying, is I think it fundamentally, human behavior is just human behavior, right? I think we're not meeting their, or MHI rather, is not meeting their base needs, which is really the root of this entire discussion.
I thought we were talking about new guys.
Well, I think
But we
it's,
can't bring in the new guys if we don't solve the existing problems. That's at its core why we were hired. We're not designing, we're not maritime architects, we're not designing any of that. We were hired to figure out the existing problems and solicit ideas to try and help the existing problems before more people came in.
Before we have a bigger problem.
Yes, exactly. So the developer wants to participate in solving this issue, and they certainly knew it was a serious problem.
What, you had a slide up there of all the different ports in the United States or on the East Coast or whatever. Am I mistaken that at one time, the wind turbines that are out there right now were all being assembled over at Port Norfolk? They were staging something over there for wind turbines over there.
Sure.
Why wasn't that like, yeah, in the Portsmouth terminal?
Age or something.
Yeah, I mean, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel?
So I can
This
speak
is a separate company that's doing what they want to do.
I understand that, but it just seems to me that you've already got it all solved there.
So I can speak to what's going on in the industry in Hampton Roads. So
Sure.
in general, we have what we characterize as a generational opportunity to create a new industry in Hampton Roads in Virginia relative to offshore wind and renewable energy. So the Dominion project will be staged at Portsmouth Marine Terminal, so directly across, you can actually see it on that map
Okay.
there. There'll be a couple of things that are happening there. Dominion will use the wharf frontage to stage the components to construct their project. And then another company will actually be building blades for offshore wind, creating 260 jobs
Is
in the
that
region.
Gamesa?
That is Gamesa.
Okay.
And so what we have here is the opportunity to really, those two properties can anchor an industry in Hampton Roads that has the potential to create thousands of jobs in the region. So let's say this isn't duplicating what's happening at Portsmouth Marine Terminal. It's and complementing it in a way that can help us grow.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand.
There's actually some existing companies that we talked to in Chelsea that are either already in the offshore wind game or trying to get into it. So there may be some synergy already in Chelsea.
But there wasn't room for this new proposed one over there.
No, and just to kind of get to a larger point, nationally, the properties like this don't exist. I mean, this is a nationally significant property for $100 billion industry. So I know that's not a neighborhood problem or issue, but when you think about climate change and economic development, what can happen here is significant and complementary to other things that can happen.
I think you've been trying to ask the
So
question.
I
Yeah.
have a question. This is all private property.
Yes.
So are there opportunities to kind of bleed public and private on their land? Could there be green space on either side of the property, totally connect to the water? One of the things I feel the saddest about Norfolk is that the entire west side is pretty much all not accessible to the water, right? The huge swath of Chelsea, we have no access to our water. We all love Comfort Park so much. Could there be little pockets on either side? Is that access an amenity for shipyard workers on their lunch break? Is there opportunity to put commercial space that the public can access on there, or is it all gonna be private? I mean, there's just a lot of land there that I feel like maybe we both get something out of this. And then I guess my other question is, when you're talking about vehicular access, like, does that mean you start cutting roads in, like where there's a dead end, a smart valve? Does that mean that that would become a road into the new property?
I think that's a question. I think that's why Kristen will be studying the transportation
Okay.
patterns. So we need to figure out, would that be good? Would that be bad? Would it be better to funnel everyone to one? Is it better to have more access?
I anticipate that she's gonna reach out to us much as Mel has,
Yeah.
and we're gonna start to have that.
Yes.
I mean, I get nothing but the sense that everybody wants to learn what our concerns are and use the creativity of the people that are participating in this for new ideas.
And will everything be gated? Is it going to go there like off limits? That does not see it. Like, so much of and so much of MHI, it's all behind this big black fence thing, and I just feel like you can't see the water, you don't know that it's this beautiful river is out there, so. I guess I'm looking to minimize the private use. That's my.
We wrote everything down. I can't answer the questions now, other than I want waterfront access to the Oxdale where they put the Ferris wheel, and we finally got access to the waterfront. I know.
A Ferris wheel
Yeah.
on that parking lot was.
I don't know all the defense industry security protocol, so I can't, but I think this should be a goal. We'll take it back to them, figure out a way or a couple of ways to get waterfront access.
I'll mention too, you guys are spot on about the transit discussion. And I wasn't gonna get into it, but I'll mention that. That's what I really would like to get from MHI and their contractors is, where do their employees live? And if we can partner with them in some way on ride sharing and transit, again, it's all about how do I influence somebody to make a decision that I want them to make. Gas is $4 going up, tolls, if you're trying to get on the other side of the water, it makes so much more economic sense for me and my family to get in a van, it's particularly, that's good for everybody. So we really want to understand where the worker's coming from. Is there a better ride sharing and transit option that not just the city, but you guys are probably familiar with Traffics, it's the arm of HRT. This is what they do for a living, is put people in ride shares together. So we really need to see if we can maximize that.
The other suggestion that was made at the Chelsea Business District was, why don't you start paying them the minute they get on that van to get into the community, so that they're not losing quote half an hour of travel where they're not in their own
The
vehicle.
speeding is, they're late, they're trying to clock in and not be
Yeah.
late,
Right.
and they're flying through the neighborhood, so, we even talked about using the Cedar Grove parking lot, or Harrison Opera House lot, when that's not being used, and they can park there and I don't know, there's so many
What
ideas.
sort of like accountability or like incentives does like MHI have at all to want to accommodate us? Like, do they, like, I don't mean to be insensitive or dumb on this, but like, do they have to care? So like, how do we get them to care?
They lose their contract if the Navy is mad at them.
Ultimately, that's,
If we go to the Navy and we bitch and moan to the Navy about MHI, they are on the hook to possibly.
And that will
lose their
take so
contract.
much pitching that it won't be our lifetime.
True.
Well, I think I'm just trying to
They
understand,
have-
like, how do you incentivize change behavior? Like, if they're a company doing this and like, we can complain or say this is.
Yeah, we have,
I think there are many, I think that's, I consider to be kind of hard leverage, right? Which is the reason why we have pushed so hard to get a meeting with the people that are the contracting officers representative for that contract. And we are going to, in the next week, share that concern with them directly. They've delayed the meeting because they're trying to, with me, because they're trying to understand what I'm gonna talk to them about in advance, right? I'm already getting word through channels that is what's going on. But we have, you know, we can lobby the Virginia Ship Repair Association, which is their trade association. There's a lot of public shaming we can do short of, you know, taking away their contract, right? And so I think there's no shortage of opportunities for us to continue to try to influence them.
And I know, Patrick, you're trying to meet with MHI,
we'll get that set up soon.
right? And then after you all meet, we're gonna see how that comes out. And then the next layer is going to our federal delegation. Senators Elaine Luria, Bobby Scott, Mark Warner, Tim Kaine, and seeing what they can do at the federal level. I'm gonna water drip this tomorrow. I'm actually gonna see Senator Warner tomorrow and Elaine Luria. And so I think we just keep ratcheting it up.
Like, I'm not advocating to shame people, I'm just trying to understand like where we can like drive change and learn from that. So it sounds like those channels are being pursued, which I think is fantastic. But then also learning from it as quickly as possible to make sure that whatever new is coming in, we're not sitting here 20 years from now having the same exact conversation, that we put the right controls in place proactively to drive a cohesive ecosystem.
Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I got one comment.
Oh, I think someone on Zoom has a question real quick.
Yeah. I've got to go ahead because it's kind of a wrap. Jason from the CBA here. So I know there's one question behind me, but I'll jump on after that.
Yes, sir.
I was going to, over my 60 years of working with the city, from the city attorney's office, on the other side, was council and numerous boards and commissions that I've served on. I found out over the years that the city makes decisions and then says, this is the best we can do. And they don't listen to citizen input. They'll take it, but they've already decided. We'll work with redevelopment, and they had plans of 12 years, but yet we had a commission that listened to all the city civic leagues, what they wanted, without knowing that they were city was under a 12-year plan, that they weren't going to change anything for the next 12 years. And I don't want to see that here. I mean, I would like to see it open and discussion. I mean, I think it's been good, but it has to be ongoing, and don't come back to us and say, we've considered everything and this is the best. How do we know it's the best? It's your decision. And there are a lot of things that we're not involved in, money-wise and otherwise, to make that particular decision. In other words, you do it on a cost-effective and what have, and you don't always listen to the systems. It's happened with Berkeley, it's happened everywhere. Okay, so all I'm doing is putting you on notice, and I'm going to be listening.
All right.
And writing letters to the editor, which
Right.
Tess does often, right?
Ma'am, did you have your hand up too?
I think Jason.
Oh, yes.
I'll come on next with just a couple of things. One is a technical question about the permitting process, because we're talking about points of leverage and incentives. And then the other is a more direct question for Pat, because I want to follow up on something you said earlier that's useful to me as a business owner in Chelsea. Hey. So the first question, and I'm not looking for an answer right now. I'm going to do some digging into code, but I've opened 2 businesses in the last 3 years in Norfolk. One is a short-term rental in Ghent. The other is Grandiflora Wine Garden in Chelsea. And both times I worked pretty closely with the city, especially with planning, to make sure that we were doing it right. And we had to do a change of use for Grandiflora. I know Fairwinds is not going to have to do anything near that elaborate, but after we did that, we had to get a zoning certificate certifying that we're in compliance before we could be issued a business license. So I'm wondering if that's a point of, and I know for the short-term rentals particularly, there's something in the code that says basically you won't be a nuisance. And I'm wondering if that's a point of leverage for the community to work with planning to set that up, just to be like, hey, there's some things if you want to be licensed, because these licenses get renewed every year. I don't know how licensing for projects this big look, but assuming that the same rules apply to all of us business owners in Norfolk, I want to take a look at that process. So that's one. Like I said, not looking for an answer, but I wanted to throw out a suggestion. The other, and if you guys have answers, I would love to hear them. But the other question that I had, speaking of incentives, is there's reasons beyond just the mechanics of the site that people choose a neighborhood, right? West Ghent and Chelsea are inseparable. They're closely connected, and so it's not just that these big projects happen and we watch them happen. Like, we participate in them in terms of making like we clean up after MHI, which makes it more livable. If we didn't do that, obviously, you know, our experience in the neighborhood would be impacted as well. But we have those points of leverage. So that leads me to my question for Pat. You mentioned that you were wondering what would incentivize you to feel like part of the neighborhood and participate and care about it, because that's a theme that I'm seeing come up. It's like, I've heard it multiple times that folks working the shipyards don't really care about the neighborhood, that's the perception. I think their experience of the neighborhood is vastly different from those of us in this room. And one question I'm asking myself as a business owner, because these guys are coming by my business all the time, I love street food. I love, like, we care about sustainability. I want the streets to be welcoming to everybody, but I don't understand, just because I don't have the life experience, how to be welcoming. Honestly, I'm in the hospitality industry and I'm like, how do I welcome these guys into the neighborhood so that they care about it as much as I do? And again, like, I'm posing the question, don't necessarily need an answer right now. But folks that are thinking along those lines, I can drop my email in the chat. I'm president of the CBA. Feel free to come to the Chelsea Business Association meetings and give us a piece of your mind. We'd love to hear from you. But Pat, specifically, if you have something in mind, reach out to me, or I'd love to hear about it. That's my piece.
I will say, yeah, you hit a key point, and it was just mentioned earlier. We're saying the same thing. Do they have to care? Well, it sounds like from a business perspective, only so much that they care about their bottom line. But you framed it the way that I'm trying to couch this, which is, what can the city do, and what can the community do with the city to make them want to care and make them want to make it a better place for their workers, for their management, and for the community, because we are intertwined. So I think that's a responsible way to approach it, with some consequences up our sleeve. I mean, I think that's a responsible way to approach it. And I like the way you put it, which is, you know, what can we do to, I'm paraphrasing what you said, what can we do to make you want to care and make you want to be a part of the solution and improve the neighborhood? So that really needs to be the focus of our work, I believe. Part of it, what's in it for me? It's got to be what's in it for all of us. Yes, sir.
So Back in 95, when we moved into this neighborhood, I never dreamed that there was going to be a ship repair facility in Chelsea. Chelsea was designated light industrial. I don't know what it's designated now. Has to be heavy industrial, if you ask me. MHI came in and everyone in the neighborhood was not real happy about that, to be quite honest with you. May I recommend to you, Scott, that you take all this information and with the help of Courtney, who's going to go higher, I think you need to take this information and the whatever the league comes up with and their approach and go right to city council at one of their meetings. You know, running it through Courtney is great, but if she's the one talking to the other council members, you know, you're behind her now, speaking to all of them.
Yeah, I
And
appreciate
they know our feelings.
Absolutely.
So
And
that's what
and
we did with MHI.
I've been working very hard behind the scenes to get the city to be present, to hear it, because I think that if they're involved, the city will, you know, why would we need the city council to do it if the city administration is fully invested in making a solution to this and suggest a solution?
And
we're
I'm
gonna
not
do it
knocking
both
you,
ways.
I get where you're going.
you know, you're an integral cog in this too, but to have you stand up at one of the council meetings
Yes, sir.
and say, I'm with the president of the West Ghent Civic League, this project is going to impact us, and this is what we see happening. We hope that you understand that and will back us up when we come knocking on your door again.
Yeah, to add to what Jim said, I spoke with Jared Chalk, who's economic development. And he said, Courtney, as soon as you come forward, you know, make this a big one. Paul Reddick's gonna do the same darn thing, because he has been complaining about Polana Shipyard in the same fashion for longer. So what if we have a city done to really help these two communities? And so I just want to piggyback on that, because there might be some really good momentum if we can solve both problems.
Scott, when you have conversations with the Navy, I've been in situations like that where the minute the liaison to the Navy gets it, they get a transfer. Right, they're gone, or they just delayed enough because they know their orders are coming. So can you anticipate that? Yes. Can we try to embed this so that it's not just in the person who's in the meeting at that moment, but that it's deeper into the muscle of the Navy? I don't know how to say it otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah.
May I ask a
Ma'am,
question?
Yes.
Please.
Y'all mentioned this WSP that's working on the traffic. When is that report due to, and who's it going to be reported to?
It's due to me, really. So I'm deputy city manager and oversee the transportation activities of the city. We've hired a firm, WSP. We've had them under contract for a few months on some other projects. We just really started putting together their scope of work here in the last couple of weeks. I'm hopeful that we can schedule a meeting. I'd like to think in the next couple of weeks with Kristen, somebody from that office, and the community to really make sure we understand the problem. If she's developed any preliminary ideas, put them out there and think, okay, what's worth pursuing and what do you hate and we want to abandon, like the parking garage idea. So I'd say within the next 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully you'll hear more about scheduling those first interactions. I wish I could tell you a timeline that I want a preliminary design in 6 months or something. We don't have a timeline for that because I don't know the magnitude of basically the improvements we're talking about. It's as soon as possible. Yes, ma'am.
So is there anyone that from the neighborhood or the Civic League that's going to be involved in any of those discussions?
I hope everybody,
those
I really
plans?
would like to get the community as engaged as you'd like to be, yes.
Does that mean you're gonna have another meeting about that?
Yeah.
Very much so, yeah, I'd like, if that's the format you want, and that's what, we could do it almost like a traffic charrette, I don't know if that's, that's how.
To start with, she has the John Stevenson study.
Oh, yeah, we've got the benefit of, Mel showed you some of her preliminary work. John's data, yeah.
At this point, I think she needs to come forward with ideas. I mean, we can have this session
Yeah.
and say the same darn thing, but I think the issues are well known.
Sure.
It's really a matter of her coming back with her thoughts and getting input from us.
Yeah,
with
we
that.
could make that the first step when we're ready to do so, and we'll keep you up to date on that.
And so one other thing that we haven't quite mentioned yet, but one thing that I've been emphasizing with Courtney and Mr. Stevenson has been reevaluating like the light sequencing on Hampton Boulevard, why it necks down into one lane going into the tunnel, why we're still getting backups all the way back up to my house at, at Woodrow on a daily basis when we put this tube in and it was supposed to fix all that. So I think it's more wide ranging to kind of solve a lot of these issues in one consolidated project.
Yes.
And so I've been working behind the scenes with Mel and Jason with the CBA, and we will make sure that they understand everyone's feedback as we know it. Please, please, please continue to share your feedback to our email address that's on the website. And we'll continue to funnel those to the people that are coming up with ideas. And then we're going to get back together and talk about what the future looks like. That's our job, is to facilitate that. So I'm happy to do it.
This has been a great conversation tonight. This is exactly what we needed folks to hear, and I'm glad you all spoke up to talk about the history and everything that we've been experiencing.
Did you have one more question? Or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so I get a lot of the feedback from our civic league feedback email. One of the main concerns, this came up with MHI asking to open up the gate. And so we live on that side of the neighborhood by Jeff Robertson and Azalea. And so the concern is like, if you open up that gate and funnel people through there to fix that problem, and then Hampton Boulevard backs up, then people cut through knowing that it's open. And they cut right down Azalea, flying down Azalea, flying up North London. So making sure that we're addressing both sides of the neighborhood, because even though they're going down Claremont.
Yeah, and I think y'all are both saying it, we've got to understand this Hampton backup. We understand, we got to understand, is there something we can do differently on the Hampton backup?
Where I take my son to school on Willowwood Drive, they've installed speed bumps for bumps, which I know some people are totally opposed to, but driving it every day for the last year, I've noticed it has significantly slowed people down, like a ton. And
I think that's
so-
been the best pilot project ever.
Okay.
It's lovely. We really like it, and that's how we got it in. We called it a pilot project.
Maybe
They're called
I
speed
don't know.
tables, and they're working. So we have to do them elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. Now those took 20 years. Literally, the last two. Yeah, they're working. They're back. Yeah.
So in the interest of time, I don't want to cut anyone off or any feedback that you might have, but I feel like it's tailing off a little bit. But I just want to express, like, we definitely don't want this conversation to be over, right? So talk to your neighbors, make them aware that there's a random YouTube video on our website about this meeting to watch the video. Maybe our watches will go up from 3 to 4 or something like that. And encourage people to tell us what their concerns are, because we are going to try to give everyone's voice to everyone involved and come up with the right ideas and come back with good ideas. So I just appreciate everyone's partnership.
I just hope that the solution for the city is not just letting us vent.
I agree. You're right.
I live on the 1100 block of Great. I'm taking personal responsibility if something happened. And that we've heard traffic cannot cut through on Redgate, it cannot go on Claremont. I don't think it's just a parking problem. I think it's not having cars enter the neighborhood to begin with. We have to solve some serious social problems. I will say it's interesting, in all the people we've interviewed, many people have said there is no way to design a solution to this. These are two different social classes of people that will never be able to peacefully coexist. So we've heard that. We've heard people say, I believe we can work together and design a solution for this. So I think we will keep coming back to kind of the conversation until it's solved to the point where the Chelsea Business Association and the West Ghent Neighborhood League, or Civic League feel we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, thanks for your leadership on that.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Scott.